Full disclosure, the voice you are listening to now is artificially generated, brought to you by satisphonic.com. See the link in the description for more details. What's the best real-life example you witnessed of someone destroying their own happiness? Young guy at work. He's in his early to mid-20s, is married with 2 young kids and a third on the way. This new girl at work has been after him so hard. He was seriously tempted and conflicted. We all tried to talk him out of it. Did he really want to throw away his family life for this? Do you really think this new girl is going to stick around once all the drama starts? When you guys get caught? He told us all one day that he finally told new girl to leave him alone. He was happy with his wife, and she didn't stand a chance. 3 weeks later, he was sleeping in his car because he went for new girl after all, got caught, kicked out as served with divorce papers, and new girl ditched him once he got depressed over it. What an idiot. Only rich, famous guys can cheat without consequences. I know a guy who gambled away $8 million his grandfather left him. He inherited at 21. It was gone by 23. He's actually an incredible good guy too. That's what kills me. God, what's even the point of gambling at that point? 8 million is enough to do whatever the fuck you want, assuming you don't do anything completely ridiculous. But think of how much more you could do with 16 million. If you are going to give somebody that big of an inheritance, then you should really put some safeguard. Yeah, it's pretty reckless to give someone young that much money without safeguards. Even if they do the smart thing, they still lack the social skills and life experience not to be preyed upon. My ex-friend Tom, 10 years ago when we were teenagers, he once said to me, "I'm going to try meth tonight," whilst we were at a bar. Australian. I literally knew nothing about drugs at the time, especially meth. I just knew it wasn't good. He invited me to join him, but I said no because I had a gut feeling it wouldn't end well for me. Since that day, he went in and out of prison, lost all of his friends, including me, and completely changed as a person. Whilst walking with my wife and daughter a few months back, I saw him walking his dog. He had obviously cleaned himself up, but it was like 2 strangers walking past each other. I took one silver lining out of this. It made me learn a lot about drugs altogether, and it showed me a different life I could have led if I said yes all those years ago. Always say no to meth. It will ruin your life and take everything. Edit. I forgot to add, Tom had it all. A living Jeef, a great job, etc. He had a living Jeef. Shit. Doing better than half the people I know. Yeah, it's pretty reckless to give someone young that much money without safeguards. Even if they do the smart thing, they still lack the social skills and life experience not to be preyed upon. A friend of mine quit a job that paid 6 figures a year because he didn't trust his girlfriend to not cheat on him while he was at work. The kicker here being she was a hooker when they met. He's a great guy, but a complete idiot when it comes to women. The kicker here being she was a hooker when they met. Roxanne. I have an insecure cousin who would regularly reject guys who were into her and chase guys who weren't interested. The more distant and emotionally unavailable the guy was, the harder she tried to win him over. The best real-life example of I don't want to be a part of any club that would have me as a member I've ever seen. I have multiple friends like this. None of them ended up in happy relationships. Counselor here, almost always a result of inattentive or emotionally neglectful parenting. I can be like this. I'm working on it. It's fully an attachment issue. I feel sorry for her and everyone who is like this. It's usually a parenting problem and stems from early childhood, so there's nothing anyone can really do to have turned out differently. All you can do is work on it when the issue becomes apparent in your 20s, and the work is long and difficult. I know a guy who is now in his 50s, 60s, who got bored with his wife and kids, cheated on her and divorced her. His wife, who had always supported him because he just couldn't hold a job down, started a business and became a multimillionaire. She also got remarried to this amazing guy who was a major step up from the husband in every aspect. The guy then married this mail-order bride from Indonesia. As soon as the 3 years she had to stay with him to get permanent residency were over, she left him and married his richer cousin. I sometimes get invited to family events and see him there by himself, broke and with none of his kids or family members wanting to talk to him. Why does he still go to family events if nobody there will talk to him? My sister was offered an incredible well-paying job doing something she's great at. She decided it would be too easy and opted for a far more challenging job in a far less appealing setting with an asshole of a boss she was hoping to impress. She's fucking miserable now. I honestly don't get why she does this sort of shit to herself. I almost understand where she's coming from, and it is not a healthy place. When I was in high school, I would gravitate towards people who weren't particularly impressed with me and tried to change their mind. I don't know why I did it. I rationalized it to myself like their lack of faith in me will lead to me working all the harder and getting all the better. But it just led to a miserable adolescence. Left that behind in college, though. This is literally the same concept as the guy's cousin above, who can't accept men who like her but chases after those who don't. If you don't like me, I will prove to you why you should mentality. You said it was sad to see, but this is the same scenario, minus the romantic relationship aspect. Literally the same. You trying to gravitate towards people who weren't impressed with you and trying to change their minds. Never mind the people who can see your worth already without you having to prove anything. Applicable to many situations. Almost like if you are able to change their minds, you somehow earned it. Like you have to earn it for it to be justified or mean anything or for it to be real. Just pointing that out to you. My mum was like that. When I was younger, she worked part-time at Target as a cashier and was amazing at selling her credit cards and service plans. So good that a guy from Merrill Lynch who went through her line a couple times offered her a job. She thought it sounded fake and never called him, despite my encouragement, because this could have gotten her out of poverty, and she's always been great at sales, but still continued trying to become her own boss, doing memes and weird online marketing schemes. This entire thread is pretty much affairs, addictions, and losing large inheritances. My dad threw out a 15-year marriage with a woman he adored because he got drunk and fucked a random co-worker. He's utterly miserable now. Did he confess, or was he caught? And was it definitely a one-time thing? Sorry, hope this isn't upsetting. Not upsetting. Your question, the situation, obviously is. And he confessed. It was definitely a one-time thing. Oddly enough, the woman was a lesbian. They had no interest in each other. Still destroyed our family, though. My mom is miserable, but too proud to take him back. If my spouse slept with someone else, there's nothing that could get me to continue a relationship with them, sadly. Just couldn't do it. I don't think I could either, and I wouldn't blame anyone for walking away in that situation. I wouldn't blame anyone for staying if they wanted to do the work, but I think I'd be done. Yep, once trust is gone, it's done. I think it's easy to think that way before you're in that situation. If you really love someone, it's really, really difficult to just switch that off because you're furious and feel betrayed. I thought the same way. Then it happened to me. Not in that relationship anymore, but I learned a whole lot from it. My ex is weirdly a reverse of this. Doctor, we were unhappy together. We split when he cheated. Everyone involved seemed much happier for a while, but his life has gone downhill since. Together, we were miserable. There was nothing good about that relationship. He ended up cheating, among other shitty behaviors, and we split. For a while, it really seemed like everybody was better off. He seemed happy to be with his affair partner. I was just thriving being single. The kids were much happier, because it turns out a home with two deeply unhappy parents is terrible for children. It was all looking up. He and I were civil and focused on co-parenting. About a year after the split, things seemed to just start spiraling for him. He lost his job in a niche field, where you really have to be the best of the best to get sustainable work, and he was simply never the best of the best. He was getting by on piecemeal contracts, and simply won't retrain into another more stable field, or even just supplement his income with something like bartending or food service or anything. His girlfriend had some kind of injury needing repeated surgeries that's limited her ability to work, so he's the breadwinner on a low and sporadic income. He started to become increasingly inconsistent with the kids and would disappear from their lives on and off, so they, being children, turned more and more to me for stability. His views became increasingly alt-right and anti-science, which in my opinion just makes you an angry, disconnected person who thinks society is persecuting you. And also it turns out I had all the financial sense in the relationship and did all his life admin, and he doesn't know how to do a lot of basic shit like refinance loans or do taxes, so there's been this long list of totally avoidable financial near disasters occurring because he didn't do, which would have prevented or comes to me asking for money because he's taken out payday loans and surprise. The interest is brutal. I learned my lesson there. I don't help him with money now. Meanwhile, I'm doing great. My kids are doing great. They like spending time with him, but don't really see him as a person to turn to for support or comfort. I look back on that first year and he seemed happy, and I'm at a bit of a loss for how it's all gone to shit for him in the years since. Oh man, my ex-girlfriend from high school, valedictorian of our class, super smart, came from an awesome family. I'm still friends with her sister and mom. Totally just dropped out of college, moved to Baltimore, and smoked crack for 15 years. Has a bunch of kids, is totally unintelligible to talk to. It's bananas. What is it about Baltimore? I had a friend get accepted into Johns Hopkins University, and he spent his time doing crack and heroin and dropped out. Johns Hopkins is in a by-ed part of town, and I say this as someone who went to grade school on the south side of Chicago. I met a woman who did her FAG at Johns Hopkins, and her car got damaged because gangbangers were rolling boulders at each other. I'm sorry, but is no one going to acknowledge rolling boulders at each other? That's the most absurd ooga booga caveman shit I've ever heard, and it's making for an absurd mental image. My ex is weirdly a reverse of this. Doctor, we were unhappy together. We split when he cheated. Everyone involved seemed much happier for a while, but his life has gone downhill since. Together we were miserable. There was nothing good about that relationship. He ended up cheating, among other shitty behaviors, and we split. For a while it really seemed like everybody was better off. He seemed happy to be with his affair partner. I was just thriving being single. The kids were much happier because it turns out a home with two deeply unhappy parents is terrible for children. It was all looking up. He and I were civil and focused on co-parenting. About a year after the split, things seemed to just start spiraling for him. He lost his job in a niche field where you really have to be the best of the best to get sustainable work, and he was simply never the best of the best. He was getting by on piecemeal contracts and simply won't retrain into another more stable field or even just supplement his income with something like bartending or food service or anything. His girlfriend had some kind of injury needing repeated surgeries that's limited her ability to work, so he's the breadwinner on a low and sporadic income. He started to become increasingly inconsistent with the kids and would disappear from their lives on and off, so they, being children, turned more and more to me for stability. His views became increasingly alt-right and anti-science, which in my opinion just makes you an angry, disconnected person who thinks society is persecuting you. And also it turns out I had all the financial sense in the relationship and did all his life admin, and he doesn't know how to do a lot of basic shit like refinance loans or do taxes, so there's been this long list of totally avoidable financial near disasters occurring because he didn't do fucks, which would have prevented ye. Or comes to me asking for money because he's taken out payday loans, and surprise, the interest is brutal. I learned my lesson there. I don't help him with money now. Meanwhile, I'm doing great. My kids are doing great. They like spending time with him, but don't really see him as a person to turn to for support or comfort. I look back on that first year, and he seemed happy, and I'm at a bit of a loss for how it's all gone to shit for him in the years since. I had a friend in college who had a tendency to act before thinking, but was generally fun and well-meaning. After I had graduated, my friend apparently got coerced by a woman he was trying to sleep with to try heroin just once. As I heard it, he refused initially, then caved because he felt pressured. My friend overdosed and died. Just like that, one bad decision ended his life. Rip my ex-neighbor. Nice guy, managed a hot music venue in La. Partied a fair bit. One day he didn't have enough cash on him for coke, so he begged his dealer to sell him crack instead. Dealer told him it was a bad idea, but would sell to him because that's what dealers do. Guy insisted. I know this because the dealer knocked on my door and told me to watch out for him because he was making some bad decisions. A week later, I noticed my neighbor's normally full of music apartment was deadly quiet. Went up there and found him passed out in literally a foot of garbage. Chip bags, takeout wrappers, cardboard boxes. It was like he carried all of our trash out to the dumpster behind the building and dumped it on his floor. Then his boss, who is awesome, paid to send my neighbor to rehab and guaranteed his job would be waiting for him when he got back. Neighbor broke out of rehab 2 days in. A month later, I found out he had gone back to his home, moved in with his parents. This guy was in his late 30s, and they're not on their floor. Don't do crack, kids. You know you fucked up when a literal drug dealer thinks you're making bad decisions. I've known a couple of dealers, through social circles, never as a customer, and they were okay guys. The ones I knew took care of their customers and cut them off if they were getting too much. I asked one of them why they did that once. His response was, I can sell him a lot now, but they're probably old and I'll have that on my conscience. Otherwise, I sell enough for them to buzz and they come back for another good time later. Weird dynamic. A good friend I worked with for years was married to a great dude. Super nice and everyone loved him. Just a great guy all around. They had a couple middle school age kids too. I think she was going through a midlife crisis type thing, but anywho, she reconnected with her old high school boyfriend on FBI and they started having an affair. She ended up telling her husband about it and left him for the other guy. Her husband was great about it, wanted her to be happy, great at co-parenting, and didn't want to make anything harder on the kids, etc. The oldest boyfriend was toxic as hell. I met him a few times and he was an absolute dick. They fought constantly. Every other week they were breaking up, kicking each other out of her condo, or he'd just go missing for days at a time, and she'd be a wreck wondering where he was, which was usually a couple hours away at the beach on a drug bender with his friends. He's in his late 40s. Badu, she said she got bored with her life with her husband and wasn't attracted to him anymore. But I think she just went off the deep end and wanted something that wasn't there anymore. That feeling and excitement of young puppy love, but that's not what she got. I think some people just need drama in their life. I felt like she threw away a happy life just because she missed the drama. I think some people just need drama in their life, God. Isn't that some horrible truth? I don't know what it is in these folks' heads, or if they believe too much in the movies books for their own sake. My parents separated earlier this year. It was 100% my dad's fault due to being an abusive textbook narcissist. Mum put their house up for sale, and he had 2 months to sort out his move. He claimed to have nothing, no support, and nowhere to go. My husband and I took pity on him, and despite having a newborn and both working, helped him pack, sell off the extra furniture to get him some cash, and I found him a secure place to buy in his budget. He turned around and said he didn't want to move into the type of place I found, an over-50s village. He's 73, because he wouldn't be able to take chicks back there to fuck. He then refused to leave the property and said the cops would have to shoot him to get him out of the house. When I put pressure on him, because otherwise the sale would have fallen over and they would have been sued, he threatened suicide, which he does absolutely every time something isn't going his way, and to burn the house down repeatedly, including in front of my 7-year-old kid. Eventually he does comply, and we move him into the granny flat of a woman he met playing pokies, slot machines for you us types, and who is apparently a millionaire from a famous family. I call bullshit, but he clearly thinks he's found someone new to mooch off. They have been at the pokies every day for months now. His money won't last long at this rate. Then I find out that through all this, all the stress and bullshit he put me through when I should have been in a happy new baby cocoon, he actually had an offer from a longtime friend to move in with him and his wife, and that they had a whole team of people willing to help him with his move. Considering that he ghosted them after they made that offer though, they have since decided to discontinue the friendship since he's shown he didn't value it or them. Guess what? My husband and I are also done with him. I was the last kid that spoke to him. So, he went from married with a family to living in insecure housing, hurtling towards poverty and homelessness, having burned every bridge he had. All because he is too narcissistic to accept that he is less than perfect and that he is ultimately responsible for his own life. That rant felt good. Edited to define pokies, which is Australian slang for slot machines, from poker machines, Very good friend of mine, very good person. Works hard, married a monster. He hasn't smiled for nearly 30 years now. Friend who got married because he didn't want to break it off and thought he would just be better off. He's dying a slow death. Same thing happened to my brother. He didn't want to hurt her feelings. There's being considerate, and then there's insanity. Something similar happened to my uncle. He got engaged. As time went on, he realized their temperaments really didn't match. She would go off at the drop of a hat when facing any modicum of stress. He tried to call the wedding off, but his parents convinced him not to. Basically told him he would shame the entire family if he did. They got married, had a baby, and got divorced 5 years later. Her temper just got worse over time. My uncle actually checked himself into a mental health facility for a few weeks after the divorce. The only good thing to come from the marriage is his son, who he has full custody of because his ex doesn't want to be weighed down with a kid right now. I have a family member who inherited around $500 in cash and assets when his mother died. He had a decent job at the time. This inheritance meant that he started taking longer vacations and stopped consistently working. He bought a sports car and paid off the 2 pre-built condos that his mother had put down payments on, but sold one immediately at a loss, and then rented the other out for a while until his original tenants moved out then, let it sit vacant for over a year and selling it at a loss. He loaned money to his half-sister to pay for tuition at a job that would never allow her to repay him. He bought every new and interesting piece of electronics. The electronics eventually caught up with him. He went on holiday to the USA, and on his way back across the border, the guards wanted to search his laptop, which led to the discovery of child porn. He was also trying to groom his niece, daughter of the half-sister. There wasn't much money left from the estate at that point. He was arrested and only managed to stay out of jail on a technicality that a very expensive lawyer found. He paid mid-$50 for his defense. The 2 or 3 years that the criminal defense was going on, he didn't work at all, just dipped out on his employer, who would have continued employing him. He sold the sports car at a loss, sold his last remaining property, the condo, at a loss, sold a bunch of his expensive toys at a loss, ended up penniless, actually probably bankrupt, but not in jail. Now his life consists of living in a small rented bedroom and working as a local trucker. He didn't just destroy his life, he nuked it from orbit and then salted the ground. He's currently in his late 40s and will probably never be able to retire. Most of the family won't speak to him at all. Being a pedo aside, $500 isn't the sorts of money you should be wasting like that. It's not fuck you money. It's fantastic money, don't get me wrong, but it's small enough that it can be gone in a heartbeat. Knew a guy that worked for a small, publicly traded company, a penny stock. It became a meme stock around the GameStop era. His holdings went from about $50 to $7 million in a few weeks. He knew the valuations were complete bullshit, but refused to sell. He said $10 million was his fuck you money number, and only when it hit that would he sell. I begged him to sell, because it was obvious it was a short-term phenomenon and he had made a lot of bad bets in his life. The company lost about 99% of its value from its high. He did get out about $500. Taxes got about 30% of it. But watch almost all of it evaporate. He's absolutely miserable at his new job. He could have retired at a young age. Still can't believe he did it, like throwing away a lottery ticket. When the alcohol took control, 10 years as a non-functioning drunk, 6 years sober. My father-in-law keeps on giving money to his drug addict son, to the cost of his credit, his reputation, his own retirement, the retirement of his wife, his marriage, his home, his car, and his relationships with his family, friends, and other son. Every 1st and 15th of the month when his pension hits, the kid pops up with a "ya wanna believe this shit" story, and my father-in-law gives him whatever he asks for. Addiction is a horror show. Don't get me wrong, but enabling. Put it to you this way. If a hurricane is heading towards your house, and right before it hits, someone comes into your house, lets all the pets out, opens all the windows and doors, and unties anything you had tied down, because he's worried all those precautions might hurt the hurricane's feelings, who do you blame for the destruction? Is he aware of his son's drug use, or is he in denial? Oh, that's one of the weirdest parts of this. It changes moment to moment. We've had conversations with him where he insists that no son of his could ever have a drug problem, and 5 minutes later asks us for money to put him through his 3rd, 4th, 5th rehab program. The answer to this question has been no. For years. It's not my job in these conversations to question him. My job is to support my husband through this shit show and not make it worse. But I always wonder what he would say if someone were to ask him, if there's no drug problem, what's the rehab for? My best friend was married to a guy who worked on the oil rigs and constantly suspected her to cheating, though she didn't give him any reason to believe that. Threw away a marriage with 2 kids on the basis of nothing. Your poor husband. I don't even know how you stage an intervention when the enabling family members are also living in denial, at least half the time. I met a guy who went to an Ivy League law school, putting himself hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. He passed the bar exam with an almost perfect score, but was rejected from the bar due to his drug history. He had been involuntarily committed to a psychiatric hospital after getting really high and becoming psychotic. No state is likely to ever accept him as a lawyer now. He's basically stuck making $40K a year as a legal assistant for the rest of his life, all because he did a bunch of drugs in college. His drug use must have been bad to get rejected from the bar. I know many attorneys, and they love their drugs. Me. And my drinking habits. My life looks fucking great on paper, but I was still drowning myself in alcohol. About 7 months sober right now. Edit. Wow, this got a lot more attention than I expected. Thank you all for the support. It really is appreciated. Feel free to ask whatever you want, comments or DMs or whatever. If sharing my story can help a single person, I'm here for it. Just going to leave a link here for anyone that's questioning their own drinking habits. It's been really helpful for me to stop drinking. This is what they don't tell you. Getting help can't hurt. Go get the help you need. It's never wrong to go get help, yeah. Well, when you go to join your dream career, that shit is now documented. Can't join the army anymore. Can't join the Air Force. That security clearance you needed is suspect. This guy is getting it from his niche too. I wish I never went to get help, because it didn't help, and all it did was hurt me. I wish I could go back in time and forget about whatever healthcare or help is out there. No one cares. They just want to find things to diminish you and throw back in your face. My ex-friend, who took the unconditional love of her husband to treat him like dirt because he always forgave her. When he finally stopped 10 years later, she was shocked that she was divorced and whined about how her life was shattered and happiness stolen. I'm still so very proud of him for getting away. My best friend gave up a boyfriend who adored her to help out her lying, cheating, alcoholic ex. He said he needed her, was on the verge of suicide, had no one else. She felt like she had to help her. Her current Beth was not okay with it, so she let him end it. She's not officially back with the asshole yet, but it's just a matter of time. Here's the best part. You may be thinking she secretly liked the cheating ex more. She did not. The cheater was also shit in bed. The new guy was incredible. She and the cheater were just childhood friends, and she couldn't bring herself to abandon him. She and the cheater were just childhood friends, and she couldn't bring herself to abandon him. I've seen misguided loyalty ruin, or at least damage, a lot of lives. I don't even know what to say. This was an infuriating. Imagine doing this to a devoted, long-time friend lover. My best friend was having an affair, and I was the only person, apart from the two of them, that knew what was going on. My friend knew that I was friends with his wife before they met, and we were close, but he just unloaded everything on me and said, "Don't tell Kelly, but the other one is pregnant." I said, "Bro, you've got 3 kids and a wife. What are you doing?" He said it was fun. I'm a bit ashamed to say that I abandoned him, and last I saw him he was in a group of street drinkers, and he chased me up the street trying to talk to me. I'm still close with Kelly. She moved on and is with a great lad now. Dude got feelings for a girl he knew for some time. She was kind, caring, genuinely good person. They texted a lot and stuff, and she seemed really interested in him. So he decided to cut her off while chasing after a mentally unstable, toxic girl who just uses him and only reaches out to him when she wants something. All while constantly whining that nobody wants him and that women are all backstabbing bitches who can't be trusted. 2 separate women, married to really great men. Though every marriage is a two-way street. Women cheated on the men multiple times, ended up leaving to be with the affair partners, which didn't work out in both cases. Both women were miserable. Both men ended up happily remarried. To this day, both women say they regret everything and know they would have been much happier with their original spouse.